I'll be playing Skyrim on Legendary Survival, but the twist is, for this challenge, every death in Skyrim adds 30 minutes to me spending time in the wild, building a secret base. There are some cool action parts in the Skyrim gameplay, some unfortunate deaths, and some really interesting things that my father and I craft during the survival part. I also want to say thank you so much for 136 subs. My original goal for the year was 100 subs, so I've already beaten that. If you guys enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. I'll be making much more content like this in the future. Let's get into the video. I did some shouting with the greybeards. One of them didn't seem to understand personal space. My character has a tail, and the guy was probably standing on it. I have no idea why he was so close behind me. Quite concerning. I also learned a new shout. I'm not sure if I read it upside down, but it didn't matter. The shout was cool and took me surprisingly far. Now that I was done here, I needed to get started. My task was to retrieve the Windcaller's horn. First things first, I needed to get out of this frozen hellhole at the throat of the world. I died getting here from the cold, so I figured getting down the mountain would be easy. I used health regen since I expected some fall damage, and then I decided to use Whirlwind Sprint. Why I did this, I don't know. Maybe it was the lack of thinking. Unsurprisingly, it resulted in my first death, adding 30 minutes to my building time. I tried again, more carefully this time. Damn, Lydia's fast, she got down there way before I did. At the bottom, there was a Stormcloak camp where I could rest. I slept, leveled up my health, and cooked some grilled leeks in the morning. I ran into a cave and encountered one of the most annoying enemies in the early game, an overgrown baboon. No, I wasn't even going to try fighting this troll. I quickly synchronized the area, and have you guys played Assassin's Creed? I attempted the leap of faith. Now we had 2 deaths, meaning an hour of building my hidden base. Eventually, I made it to another cave and ran into a Fulmer. These things creeped me out when I was younger. Thankfully, Lydia and my summon managed to kill it. The cave was beautiful, full of glowing fungus. I stopped to admire it, but then I ran into another Fulmer. Using the same tactic, I managed to survive. We encountered 2 more Fulmer, and I was impressed. I hadn't died yet. The loot from these enemies was pretty decent, and I planned to sell it later. There was a Fulmer standing in front of a massive Dwarven door. I managed to defeat the Fulmer by myself, or at least that's how I remember it. But what I found behind that door completely caught me off guard. A towering Dwarven automaton was waiting for me, and I knew this was going to be a serious challenge. I tried every tactic I could think of, but the automaton unleashed a powerful steam attack and defeated me. This added 30 more minutes to my building time, bringing the total time to 1.5 hours. Not ready to give up, I came up with a new plan: resurrect some enemies and use them to fight for me. Unfortunately, they were too far away and the resurrection time ran out. Realizing I couldn't win this fight, I decided to grab whatever loot I could and make a run for it. I succeeded in getting the loot, but for some reason the nearby Fulmer aggroed against me. This added another 30 minutes, making my total building time 2 hours. I tried again with summoning, but it didn't work. I grabbed the loot and used Whirlwind Sprint to escape the room as fast as possible. After catching my breath and waiting for Lydia to catch up, we left the cave behind. The journey ahead was still long. As we traveled, I noticed something to my left, a strange figure in the distance, that clown-looking creep, but I decided to ignore it. Soon we entered a snowy region, and the freezing temperatures were harsh. With survival mode active, I was struggling to stay warm. After climbing some steep mountains, I finally came across a spot that seemed perfect. A standing stone, a campfire, and some sleeping bags, all in one place. Unfortunately, it was occupied by bandits. I summoned a companion to help me, but one of the bandits immediately focused on me. Thinking quickly, I used Whirlwind Sprint to dash forward and take cover behind the standing stone. I waited patiently for the right moment to attack. And this moment was when there was only one bandit left and their health was almost gone. After a quick nap and leveling up both my health and conjuration skills, I spotted a shrine in the distance. It looked incredible, and I was tempted to explore it. However, I was hesitant since every death added more time to my clock. Instead, I decided to stick to the objective, which was still a long way off. The walk was uneventful, which I was actually grateful for. Eventually, we reached our destination, but were immediately rushed by bandits. I relied on my usual strategy, staying on the outskirts, hitting and running, and using whirlwind sprint to reposition myself behind enemies. After a tough battle, we managed to defeat them. Taking a moment to stand by the fire, Lydia and I mentally prepared ourselves for the dungeon ahead. Inside, we encountered necromancers. I stuck to my hit and run tactic, avoiding direct combat as much as possible. I was injured a few times, but managed to keep my distance. The last necromancer, however, unleashed a power I had never seen before. Thankfully, Lydia came through with a perfectly timed attack, taking them down. Deep into the dungeon, we found Draga fighting necromancers. By this point, I'd become skilled at identifying weak enemies and chasing them down when necessary. My new shot proved incredibly useful in these situations. Unfortunately, my streak of success didn't last. I carelessly stepped on a trap, and that was the end of me. Just like that, another 30 minutes was added to my outdoor building time, bringing the total time to 2.5 hours. I encountered a Draga and it nearly took me out in one hit. Forced to retreat, I stumbled on gates that were opened by activating sensors. Before progressing, I decided to look around a bit more. While messing around with the skeleton, I underestimated the situation and sadly, it got the better of me. Another death meant my outdoor building time increased to 3 hours outside. Determined to make up for the setback, I switched into speedrun mode. I quickly navigated through the gates, avoided the traps like I was playing The Floor is Lava, and even had a thrilling game of run away from the scary spiders. Despite the challenges, I eventually secured the horn, making the completion of my Skyrim challenge. Now it was time for the second part of the challenge, spending 3 hours in the wild constructing a hidden shelter. Let's see how that turns out. For this part of the challenge, my dad joined me as he's a big fan of outdoor projects like this. Our task was to spend 3 hours building a hidden base in the wild. I should apologize for the bad video quality. I'm using my phone to record everything. Together, my dad and I trekked through the forest, heading toward a spot I'd scoped out earlier. It was an ideal location, conveniently near another project I'm currently working on. Stay tuned for more on that. The area was perfect for laying sticks across and starting work on our hidden base. For equipment, I brought my cookery for chopping trees, water, yes, for hydration, and my dad brought his trusty machete to help with cutting. As we got started, my dad quickly crafted a spade to help move the mush and leaves from the ditch we planned to use. I focused on clearing the ditch of sticks, which was full of leaves. I had to stay cautious as puff adders and other creepy crawlers could easily be lurking in there. Using the makeshift spade, I began removing the leaves, which was tricky with one hand while recording with the other. We placed some logs that I had previously cut for another base, but it wasn't enough, so we headed into the forest to chop down more trees. My dad used his machete to quickly bring down a few, and I was grateful to have him there. It made the whole process much faster than if I'd been working alone. Things started to take shape, but we still needed more logs and sticks to create a mesh structure for the leaves. The goal was to make the base blend in seamlessly with the ground. After gathering small branches, we created a sturdy mesh. To camouflage it further, we piled up leaves and spread them across the mesh, mimicking the natural fallen leaves on the forest floor. However, it became clear that we'd need a lot more leaves to complete the look. The base was starting to come together, but there was still plenty of work ahead. We spent a lot of time collecting leaves to perfect the camouflage for our hidden base. My dad was once again proving to be incredibly useful during this process. After we had gathered a massive pile of leaves, I started chucking them onto the mesh. Thankfully, the leaves didn't fall through, and after layering on a significant amount, the base was beginning to look impressively camouflaged. To make things easier, we quickly crafted a rake, or rather, my father crafted a rake using some supple sticks and vines. This makeshift tool turned out to be far more effective than the plain sticks we had been using. By the time we were done, the base was so well hidden that even we had trouble identifying where the actual ditch began. It blended in seamlessly with the forest floor and would make an excellent dead drop trap. I decided to refine the entrance, making it smaller and more discreet by packing sticks along the sides. I grabbed my cookery to go chop down some more trees, while my dad came up with another idea. He wanted to create a shelf using his makeshift spade. He began digging into the ground to carve out a spot for it. The ground was incredibly hard, but he managed to create a sort of shelf. And when I say sort of shelf, I mean if you've never seen any furniture before, you might call this a shelf. Regardless, it added character to our hidden base. The ground was too hard for me to put the sticks into the side, so I had to leave the idea. With the base looking impressively concealed, we decided it was time for a quick tour. Since we had some extra time before I needed to get back to work, we decided to make some weapons. Using river rocks, we smashed them to create sharp pieces that could serve as arrowheads or small knives. Also crossed the river to see if our base was visible from the other side, and it wasn't. It was completely hidden from view, blending perfectly into the landscape. During all of this, I stumbled upon a little millipede. He tried biting me, but his teeth weren't strong enough to pierce my skin. Millipedes are poisonous, not venomous, so you can't eat them, but they're harmless otherwise. I placed some logs and sticks over it to prevent anyone from accidentally stepping onto it. Not that anyone ever walks through this forest. I also attempted to craft a knife from river rocks, but my crafting skills were clearly too low. I shouldn't have let my dad handle all the crafting. My makeshift knife was only good for the useless task of debarking sticks. Meanwhile, my dad's weapon making skills were on another level. He used sticks, vines, and reeds to craft an incredible weapon. It was so sharp and well made, and he even let me try it out after I asked him hundreds of times. By the end of the session, we were thoroughly impressed with what we had accomplished. With our hidden base complete, we packed up and headed home for a much deserved cup of coffee. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.